In 1954, you could walk into a Woolworth's, drop onto a chrome stool, and eat a full hot lunch for 35 cents. Behind the marble counter stood a man in a paper cap who could mix 40 drinks without writing a thing down. That job does not exist anymore. Number 14 was so popular that drugstores fought over the recipe, and today you cannot order it anywhere. Number 1, the drink that built the Coca-Cola fortune was served by hand for 50 years before a machine erased it forever. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 40 forgotten drugstore lunch counter foods nobody serves anymore. Number 40, the cherry phosphate. Before soda ever came in a can, the most popular drink at any fountain in America was the phosphate, and the undisputed king of them all was cherry. The soda jerk pumped a measured shot of cherry syrup into the bottom of a tall glass, added a dash of acid phosphate, that sour mineral tang that gave the drink its name, then filled it with cold carbonated water drawn straight from the spigot. He stirred it once with a long spoon and slid it across the marble. The result was bright, tart, fizzy, and barely sweet, nothing at all like the heavy, sugary cola syrups that eventually replaced it. A cherry phosphate cost a nickel in 1952, and for that nickel, you could sit and sip it slow while the ceiling fans turned overhead. The acid phosphate was the secret. That slightly salty, slightly sour bite cut through the sweetness and made your mouth water for the next sip, which is exactly why the drink was so addictive on a hot afternoon. Pharmacies stocked acid phosphate by the gallon because it was technically classified as a digestive aid, a mild tonic, which is how the drink ended up at a drugstore counter in the first place. Children begged for them. Working men drank them on their break. Whole afternoons were built around a nickel glass of cherry phosphate and a turn on the stool. Today, the bottle of acid phosphate has vanished from every drugstore shelf in the country, and with it, the drink itself. Most Americans under 60 have never tasted one and never will. Number 39, the Lime Ricky. On a hot July afternoon in 1955, nothing in town beat a Lime Ricky, and the line at the fountain proved it. The jerk squeezed half a fresh lime right into the glass by hand, then dropped the spent rind in too because the oils in the peel were half the flavor. He added a pump of lime syrup and a splash of acid phosphate, then charged the whole thing with soda water until it foamed up and threatened to spill over the rim. Some shops finished it with a single maraschino cherry bobbing on top. It was sharp and green and so cold it made your teeth ache, the kind of drink that snapped you awake on the muggiest day of summer. A nickel bought you one, and for that nickel you could sit at the counter for 20 minutes, spinning slowly on the stool, watching the whole town walk past the big front window. The Lime Ricky was the drink of summer for 40 years, the thing teenagers ordered after the matinee, and the thing tired shoppers ordered to revive themselves before the bus ride home. It had a clean, almost grown-up tartness that made it feel more sophisticated than a sweet soda, and fountains advertised it on the chalkboard the second the weather turned warm. Now it survives only in a handful of stubborn old New England fountains, and even there, the teenagers working the counter have never heard the name. Order one in most of America today, and you will get a blank stare and a polite suggestion that you try a Sprite instead. Number 38, Green River. This emerald green soda was a Midwestern obsession, and nowhere more so than Chicago, where for a stretch of years it actually outsold Coca-Cola at the fountain, a fact that sounds impossible until you remember how beloved it was. Green River was a lime-flavored syrup, the exact color of a traffic light, mixed with cold carbonated water into a drink so vividly, impossibly green that it looked like something a careless chemist had spilled. Children begged their mothers for it, partly for the sweet tart lime taste, and partly because of the bright green stain it left on your tongue, a badge you could show your friends that lasted clear until supper. The syrup arrived at the counter in a tall glass jug that sat proudly on the back bar among the other flavors, and the jerk would tip it and pump it like he was performing a small ceremony. During Prohibition, Green River had been marketed as a respectable, alcohol-free alternative to a cocktail, something a person could order without raising eyebrows, and it carried that faint air of sophistication for decades afterward. It was the drink of soda fountains, drugstores, and corner candy stores all across the upper Midwest. The fountain version, frothed fresh and poured over a glass packed with crushed ice, died right along with the lunch counters that served it. You can still hunt down Green River bottled in parts of the Midwest if you know where to look, and it is a genuine treat. But the hand-mixed glass, that ceremony at the marble counter, is gone for good. Number 37, the ice cream soda. This was the drink that built the soda fountain into an American institution, and almost nobody alive makes it correctly anymore. There was a strict order of operations, and a good jerk followed it like scripture. First, he laid down an inch of flavored syrup at the bottom of the glass. Chocolate, strawberry, or vanilla, your choice. Then he added just a splash of milk or sweet cream. Then, crucially, a single short squirt of soda water, which he stirred hard to whip the syrup and cream into a thick, billowing froth. Only after that froth had formed did the 2 scoops of ice cream go in, and only then did he fill the rest of the glass with soda water, poured slowly down the inside of the glass, so it climbed up through the ice cream into a creamy, fizzing, foaming tower that rose right over the rim. You got a long spoon for the ice cream and 2 paper straws for the soda. The trick, the thing that separated a real ice cream soda from a sad imitation, was that order of operations. The froth had to form before the ice cream went in, or the whole thing fell flat and watery. A proper ice cream soda cost a dime in 1955, and watching the jerk build one was half the fun. What passes for an ice cream soda today, on the rare menu that even lists one, is usually just a scoop of ice cream dumped into a glass of soda, and any old soda jerk who saw it would be genuinely ashamed of the profession. Number 36, the Black Cow. Long before root beer float became the standard, polite name everyone uses today, kids all across the country bellied up to the counter sheet and ordered a Black Cow. The jerk filled a tall glass about 2/3 of the way with cold draft root beer pulled fresh from the tap, then dropped in a fat, heavy scoop of hand-dipped vanilla ice cream, and the whole glass erupted instantly into a brown, foaming volcano that boiled up over the rim and ran down onto the marble counter in sticky rivers. That overflow was part of the experience. The ice cream melted slowly into the cold root beer as you drank, turning the bottom third of the glass into a thick, sweet, half-frozen slush that you fought to reach with your straw, scrape and slurping until the last drop was gone. A Black Cow cost a dime, and in 1,000 small towns, it was the standard reward a child got for a good report card or a chore well done. Some fountains made a close cousin called a brown cow, using chocolate ice cream and cola instead of vanilla and root beer, and customers had fierce loyalties to one or the other. The drinks technically survive in name. You can still order a root beer float almost anywhere, but the draft root beer pulled from a real tap, The heavy hand-dipped ice cream, the foaming overflow on a cold marble counter you spilled it on, all of that texture and ceremony is gone, replaced by canned root beer and a machine-scooped puck of ice cream in a plastic cup. Number 35, the hand-mixed cherry Coke. A cherry Coke today is a button you push, pre-mixed and shot out of a fountain gun or cracked open from a can, identical every single time. In 1953, it was a small work of art made for you and you alone. The jerk pumped a precise, measured shot of Coca-Cola syrup into the glass, added a pump of real cherry syrup, dropped in a glistening maraschino cherry, then charged it with cold, carbonated water and stirred the whole thing with a long spoon until it was perfectly blended. Every cherry Coke was built one at a time, by hand, to your exact taste. If you liked it sweet, you asked for it extra cherry, and the jerk added another pump. If you found it too heavy, you asked for it light on the syrup, and he adjusted. The drink was a conversation between you and the man behind the counter, and the regulars never even had to say their order. It cost a nickel. And the cherry Coke was just the beginning of what that same counter could do with a glass of Coke and a few bottles of syrup. You could get a vanilla Coke, a lemon Coke, a chocolate Coke, even a cherry vanilla Coke, each one mixed fresh and stirred by hand. The flavored cola was a whole secret menu that every regular knew and every newcomer discovered. When the automatic dispensing machines took over in the 1960s and the 1970s, all of that customization simply died. A cherry Coke stopped being something a person made for you and became another preset, exactly the same in Maine as in California, and the little daily ritual of ordering it your way disappeared. Number 34, the dope. Here is one that is not a food so much as a vanished piece of American language, and it deserves a place on this list. Across the South, for the better part of 50 years, you did not walk into a drugstore and order a Coca-Cola. You ordered a dope. The name traced back to the drink's earliest days, when cola syrup was sold and advertised as a genuine pick-me-up tonic, a stimulant that gave you a lift, and the slang simply stuck long after anyone remembered why. A soda jerk pulling a glass of Coke from the fountain would call out one dope to the kitchen without a second thought. The lingo branched out from there. You could order a dope with a headache, which meant a Coke with extra syrup for an extra kick. You could get a dope and lemon. The slang was so common, so completely ordinary, that asking for a Coca-Cola by its full proper name marked you instantly as an outsider, a Yankee, somebody not from around here. A dope cost a nickel at the counter and came served in a heavy, ribbed glass, the same shape as the famous bottle. Grandparents ordered dopes. Children ordered dopes. The word was woven so deeply into Southern daily life that it appeared in conversation, in jokes, in the way a whole region talked about a simple soft drink. It faded out through the 1970s as the lunch counters that gave it a home shut down one by one. Today, a Southerner who walks up and orders a dope gets nothing but a confused, slightly alarmed look from a teenager behind a register. Number 32, the Frosted. A Frosted was the milkshake's lighter, leaner cousin, and it has all but completely disappeared from the American menu. To make one, the jerk combined cold milk, a pump of flavored syrup, and a single small scoop of ice cream in the tall steel mixing cup, then clamped it onto the green Hamilton Beach spindle mixer and let it whir until the whole thing turned foamy and frothy, but stayed thin enough that you could actually drink it through a straw without collapsing your cheeks from the effort. That was the entire appeal. A full malt or a thick shake was a heavy, spoon-standing commitment, almost a meal. A frosted was what you ordered when you wanted something cold and sweet and refreshing, but did not want to fill up. The in-between drink for the in-between moment. It cost about 15 cents. The whole experience depended on that spindle mixer whirring away at the end of the counter, a sound so associated with treats that just hearing it start up made your mouth water and turned every head at the counter to see what was coming. Modern shops have, almost without exception, abandoned the middle ground entirely. You can get a thick, machine-pumped milkshake that defeats every straw, or you can get a thin flavored soda, but the frosted, that perfect, drinkable, frothy, sweet spot right between the two, slipped quietly through the cracks somewhere in the last 60 years. Nobody decided to kill it. It just stopped being made, one closed counter at a time, until the word itself fell out of the language. Number 31. The accidental milkshake. Here's a strange and wonderful piece of history that almost nobody knows. The thick, spoonable, straw-defeating milkshake we all picture today partly exists because of a soda jerk's mistake. The standard fountain shake of the early 1900s was a thin thing, just milk and flavoring shaken cold over ice, light and drinkable, more like the frosted we just talked about. The story goes that a clerk slipped or moved too fast and let far too much ice cream tumble into the cup before mixing, producing a shake so thick and rich that the customer was startled and then delighted and demanded it that way from then on. Word spread, and the thick shake was born. By the 1950s, the malted version of this happy accident ruled the entire counter. The jerk scooped 3 generous dips of hand-packed ice cream into the steel cup, added cold milk and a pump of syrup, and clamped it onto the spindle mixer until it came out so thick that a straw would stand straight up in it on its own, unsupported. A shake cost about 20 cents, and here is the detail that mattered most. It was always served with the leftover overflow still in the steel mixing cup, set down right beside your glass. That extra third of a shake, frosty and cold from the metal, was widely understood to be the best part, a little bonus, a gift. Today's machine-pumped shakes come out of a soft serve nozzle into a paper cup with a lid, and they never, ever come with that steel cup on the side. The gift is gone. First pattern break. Here is what made the soda jerk so much more than a kid pouring drinks. He was a performer, and the great ones knew it. They flipped glasses through the air and caught them, caught scoops of ice cream behind their backs, and pulled soda from the spigot in a long, showy arc without spilling a single drop on the marble. They worked entirely from memory, mixing a dozen different drinks at once during the after-school rush, keeping every order straight in their heads while joking with the regulars. And they spoke a secret, elaborate language that customers came in just to overhear. Burn one, take it through the garden, and pin a rose on it meant a hamburger with lettuce, tomato, and onion. Adam and Eve on a raft, wreck 'em, meant 2 scrambled eggs on toast. 81 meant a plain glass of water, and 95 meant a customer was walking out without paying. The lingo got so famous and so complicated that joke books and newspaper columns were published just to translate it for the public. Being a soda jerk was, for decades, the single most common first job for an American teenager. A rite of passage that taught a generation how to work fast, count change, and talk to strangers. By 1970, the job had nearly ceased to exist. An entire profession, an entire vocabulary, an entire way that young Americans entered the working world, gone in a single generation, with almost no one stopping to mark its passing. Number 30, the EGG cream. This is, without much argument, the most misleadingly named drink in all of American history, because a real egg cream contains neither egg nor cream, not one drop of either. A true Brooklyn egg cream is made from exactly 3 things in exactly one order: chocolate syrup, ice-cold whole milk, and seltzer. The jerk put the syrup in first, then the cold milk, then he tilted the glass and shot the seltzer in hard against the back of a spoon, working it vigorously until a thick, pure white, foamy head rose up on top, dense and creamy looking, like the head on a fresh poured glass of beer. That white foam over the dark chocolate body is the whole signature of the drink, and getting it right was a genuine skill. The secret was the seltzer. It had to come from a real pressurized siphon bottle with enough force behind it to whip the milk into foam on contact. Flat bottled seltzer poured from a cap simply would not do it, and any New Yorker would tell you so in no uncertain terms. An egg cream cost a nickel and was the defining drink of the New York candy store and lunch counter for a solid 50 years. The thing kids drank on the stoop and the thing cab drivers grabbed on a break. The original Fox's You Bet chocolate syrup, made in Brooklyn, was the absolute gold standard, and old-timers will swear to this day that it is the only acceptable kind, that anything else is an imposter. The egg cream survives in a few stubborn, beloved New York spots that refuse to let it die. But for the rest of the country, it has vanished so completely that most Americans have never even heard of it. Number 29, the Western sandwich. Also known across much of the country as the Denver, this was the working man's lunch counter sandwich. The hot, fast, no-nonsense order of a man who had 30 minutes and real hunger. The cook cracked 2 or 3 eggs into a bowl, beat them up with diced ham, chopped onion and green pepper, then poured the whole mixture out onto the hot, flat-top griddle where it sizzled and set. He folded it over into a flat omelet, let it brown, and slid it straight between 2 slices of toasted white bread, sometimes with a smear of butter, sometimes plain. That was it. A Western cost about $1 and came with a crisp pickle spear on the side and maybe a few potato chips. The real beauty of it, the reason it was on every counter from coast to coast, was that it ran almost entirely on scraps. A little leftover ham from yesterday, half an onion, the last end of a green pepper that was about to turn, all of it folded into eggs and turned into a hot, hearty, satisfying meal for almost no cost. It was efficient, it was filling, and a man could eat the whole thing in 10 minutes, standing up before heading back to the shop floor. Diners across America still serve a Denver omelet on a plate with a fork, and that is a fine thing. But the sandwich version, that folded omelet pressed warm between 2 slices of toast and eaten with one hand while you read the paper at the counter, has largely disappeared from American menus and American memory. Number 28, pimento cheese. Long before it got rebranded as Southern Caviar and started showing up on $12 appetizer menus in fancy restaurants, pimento cheese was the humble, everyday working spread of the lunch counter, especially across the South. The cook grated a block of sharp cheddar by hand, folded in plenty of mayonnaise in a jar of chopped pimentos, those soft, sweet red peppers, seasoned it with a little black pepper and maybe a pinch of cayenne, and kept a big tub of it ready in the cold case. From that one tub came a dozen different cheap, fast meals. Spread thick on 2 slices of soft white bread, it made a sandwich for a dime. Spread on a hot hamburger patty, it made a pimento cheeseburger, gooey and tangy. Spread into the rib of a celery stalk, it stretched into a light afternoon snack for a shopping lady. It even went on crackers, on toast, into grilled sandwiches. The orange and red speckled mixture was an absolute fixture of every southern drugstore counter, every five and dime, and every church basement potluck in the region. It was beloved partly because it was so cheap to make, using up cheese ends and inexpensive jarred peppers that cost almost nothing. And here is the thing, the fancy jarred versions sold in grocery stores today cannot capture. The counter version was made fresh that very morning and was usually gone by closing, which meant it tasted brighter, sharper, and cleaner than anything that has sat sealed on a refrigerated shelf for 2 weeks. Fresh pimento cheese, made by hand and eaten the same day, is a genuinely different and better food than what most Americans know by the name now. Number 27. The olive nut sandwich. This one will sound genuinely strange to a modern ear, almost made up, but it was a real and beloved lunch counter favorite for decades. The cook took soft cream cheese and thinned it with mayonnaise into a spreadable paste, then folded in chopped green olives, specifically the pimento stuffed kind, and a handful of chopped pecans, and spread the whole thing thick on soft white bread. The result was a sandwich that hit every note at once, creamy from the cheese, salty and briny from the olives and their juice, and crunchy from the nuts, all with a faint, pretty pink color that the olive brine tinted into the spread. It cost about 15 cents and was firmly considered a ladies' lunch sandwich, the kind of refined, slightly fancy thing served at the counter during the daytime shopping hours when women came downtown to do their errands and stopped in for a bite. It paired beautifully with a cup of hot tea or a cold cherry phosphate. The olive nut sandwich appeared on lunch counter and tea room menus from coast to coast all through the 1940s and the 1950s, and recipes for it were traded in community cookbooks and ladies' magazines as a reliable crowd pleaser. And then it simply vanished. Today you will be hard-pressed to find it on a single restaurant menu anywhere in America. It did not get banned. It did not get a bad reputation. It did not poison anyone. It just quietly slipped off the menus when the counters closed and an entire generation grew up never knowing it had ever existed. It deserves a comeback. Number 26. The toasted cheese. Before everyone agreed to call it a grilled cheese, the lunch counter called it a toasted cheese, and the counter version had a trick the home kitchen never matched. The cook buttered the outsides of the bread generously, laid in slices of bright orange American cheese, set the sandwich on the hot, flat-top griddle, and then, crucially, pressed it flat with a heavy steel weight. Sometimes it was the bottom of another pan, sometimes a clean brick wrapped in foil kept just for the purpose, sometimes a proper sandwich press. The weight did two things at once. It forced the bread thin and flat, so it crisped up evenly and completely, edge to edge, and it pushed the heat through so the cheese melted all the way to gooey in half the time it would take at home. The sandwich came off that griddle golden brown, flat and audibly crackling, cut on the diagonal into two neat triangles, and served with a pickle. A toasted cheese cost 15 cents, or 20 cents if you got it with a steaming cup of tomato soup, which was the classic and perfect pairing. Children who turned their noses up at everything else on the menu would eat this without a word of complaint. The combination of the griddle, the steel weight, and that slick of butter cooked dark and crisp at the very edges is exactly what made the counter version so much better than anything a mother could produce in a frying pan at home, where the bread browned unevenly and the middle stayed pale. It was a humble sandwich elevated by technique, and that technique left the building when the griddles went cold. Number 25. The hot beef commercial. This was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the lunch counter. the meal that put a grown man to sleep in his chair by 2 in the afternoon. The cook laid 2 slices of plain white bread flat on a wide plate, piled them high with hot sliced roast beef or roast turkey straight from the kitchen, covered the entire thing with a mountain of mashed potatoes scooped on top, and then ladled rich brown gravy over absolutely everything until the plate was a flooded, steaming swamp, the bread soaked through, the potatoes half dissolving into the gravy. You ate it with a fork and a knife, and you were not getting much done for the rest of the day afterward. The dish got its odd name because it was the cheap, fast, enormously filling lunch favored by traveling salesmen, the commercial men who drove from town to town and needed one big, affordable meal to carry them through long hours on the road. It cost about 50 cents and delivered more calories than most men needed, which was exactly the point. There was nothing the least bit elegant about it, no garnish, no presentation, just hot, salty, gravy-drenched comfort engineered to fuel a hard working day. It was on the menu of nearly every lunch counter, diner, and roadside stop in the country, a true coast-to-coast staple. The open-faced hot beef or hot turkey commercial still hangs on stubbornly in a handful of old-school Midwestern diners, where the locals would riot if it disappeared. But at the drugstore lunch counter, where it was once a daily special, it is completely, utterly long gone. Number 24, Salisbury steak. This was the lunch counter's clever answer to a steak dinner, delivering the feeling of a hearty meat and potatoes meal at a fraction of the price of an actual steak. The cook mixed ground beef with breadcrumbs, a beaten egg to bind it, and minced onion for flavor, shaped the mixture into a thick oval patty and seared it hard on the griddle until a brown crust formed. Then he smothered it in a ladle of brown onion gravy and served it alongside a scoop of mashed potatoes, sometimes with a few green beans or peas on the side. It looked like a steak sitting there under all that gravy. It filled you up like a steak, and it cost about a third of what a real cut of beef would have run you, which is precisely why it appeared on lunch counter and cafeteria menus across the country for decades. The dish carried a touch of unexpected dignity from its name, after Dr. James Salisbury, a 19th century physician who promoted ground beef as a health food and a remedy for all manner of ailments. That respectable, almost medical-sounding name turned a humble, seasoned hamburger patty into something that sounded like a proper entree a person could be proud to order. Salisbury steak was a genuine workhorse of mid-century American eating, the reliable hot lunch that fed millions of working people affordably. Today it survives mostly as a sad, gray, compartmentalized rectangle in a frozen TV dinner, a pale and joyless shadow of the fresh, griddle-seared, gravy-smothered version that a cook once made for you to order at a counter while you waited. Number 23, liver and onions. This is the one that makes modern people shudder, but it was once among the most ordered hot plates at the counter. The cook dredged thin slices of calf or beef liver in seasoned flour and seared them fast on the griddle, 2 minutes aside and no more, while a heap of onions cooked low and slow until soft, sweet, and golden in the drippings. Done right, the liver was tender, mild, and almost buttery. Cooked even a minute too long, it turned tough, gray, and bitter, which is exactly how a generation of children learned to hate it. At about 20 cents a pound, liver was one of the cheapest things in the butcher case, and a powerhouse of iron and protein, so much so that doctors recommended it. Lunch counters featured it as the daily special, We stopped eating it the moment we could afford to, and we lost the knowledge of how to cook it so it tastes good. Number 22. Creamed chipped beef on toast. Every veteran of World War II or the Korean War knew this dish by a saltier nickname we cannot print, and many kept ordering it as civilians for the rest of their lives. The cook tore thin slices of dried, heavily salted beef into strips and stirred them into a thick white sauce of butter, flour, and milk, then ladled the whole creamy mess over crisp triangles of toast. The saltiness of the cured beef seasoned the entire sauce on its own. It cost about a quarter and showed up on menus coast to coast. For the men who had eaten it for breakfast on a base somewhere, it carried a powerful pull of memory, the taste of being young and in uniform. Mothers made the home version from that same little glass jar of dried beef as a cheap, fast supper. Today it appears almost nowhere, except in grumbling conversations among aging veterans, and the lunch counters that served it have all closed. Number 21. Chicken a la king. This was the fancy option, the dish you ordered to feel, for a moment, like you were dining somewhere finer than a drugstore stool. Diced cooked chicken, mushrooms, and red pimento were folded into a rich, velvety cream sauce, often sharpened with a splash of sherry, then spooned over toast points, a split biscuit, or a flaky puff pastry shell. It looked elegant with its pale sauce and flecks of red and green, yet it cost only about 40 cents. The cleverness was that it stretched a little leftover chicken into a hot, creamy, satisfying plate that felt like luxury. It appeared everywhere: lunch counters, hotel dining rooms, and above all, the ladies' luncheons, where it was practically the official dish. Chicken a la king was, for decades, the picture of comfortable American refinement, and it has almost completely vanished, swept away along with the whole genre of creamy dishes served over toast points. Number 20. Welsh rarebit. Pronounced rabbit by everyone who ordered it, this dish contained no rabbit, nor any meat at all. The cook melted sharp cheddar with a little beer or milk, a dab of mustard, and a shake of Worcestershire into a thick, savory sauce, then poured it bubbling over toast and sometimes browned the top under the broiler. It was the counter's most sophisticated cheap meal, a plate of melted cheese on bread that its fancy English name made sound worldly and special. It cost a quarter. Some counters added a slice of tomato or a strip of bacon and called it a Welsh rarebit deluxe. The dish was a holdover from an earlier, more formal era of American dining that hung on through the 1950s, ordered by older customers who remembered it and curious younger ones drawn in by the name. Today, almost no one under 70 has heard of it, and the counters that served it are parking lots now. Second pattern break. So what killed the drugstore lunch counter? Not one thing, but a wave. In 1955, Ray Kroc opened his first McDonald's, and the model that followed, fast, cheap, eaten in your car, made the slow ritual of the counter feel old-fashioned. The interstate highways pulled families out of downtown and into the suburbs, away from the drugstores where the counters lived. Television gave people a reason to eat at home on a tray, and the drugstores ran the numbers. A square foot of floor space made far more profit as shelving than as a stool where a man nursed a nickel Coke for an hour. So they pulled the counters out, one by one, through the 1960s and 70s. Woolworths, whose name was once a synonym for the lunch counter, closed its last American store in 1997. The counters did not die because the food was bad. They died because they were not profitable enough, and a place where a whole town once gathered became a place to grab a prescription and leave. Number 19, the coney. This was not the hot dog you char in your backyard. The lunch counter coney was a steamed natural casing frankfurter with a snap, served in a soft steamed bun. It was topped with a fine, almost saucy beef chili with no beans, a line of yellow mustard, and a handful of diced raw onion. The chili was the secret, ground so fine it clung to the dog like a sauce, seasoned with a closely guarded, often Greek-influenced blend, heavy on cumin and with a whisper of cinnamon. A coney cost about 15 cents, and nobody ate just one. It was a fixture across the industrial Midwest, but nowhere more than Michigan, where Greek immigrant families built whole institutions around their versions, and where the rivalry between recipes is taken as seriously as religion. The bottled coney sauce you buy today is a pale imitation of the real thing, simmered fresh, and most of the original counters have closed. Number 18, the patty melt. This was the perfect marriage of a hamburger and a grilled cheese, and it could only exist because of the counter's flat-top griddle. The cook seared a thin patty, then built it on rye. The patty, a pile of onions cooked down slow and sweet, slices of Swiss or American cheese, and the top slice. Then he pressed the whole thing flat on the buttered griddle until the rye was deep golden and crisp, and the cheese oozed out the sides into lacy edges. It came off dense and dark, cut in half so the cheese stretched. A patty melt cost about 35 cents, the order of someone who wanted a burger but craved something richer. The dish needs a real griddle and a heavy hand with butter. The bread has to fry, not toast, and as the counters closed, the proper patty melt became rare, found only in the last surviving diners. Number 17, the French dip. At its core, it was shockingly simple. Thin sliced roast beef on a crusty roll with a small cup of the beef's own juices, the au-juice, for dipping. The cook carved the roast fresh, stacked it warm on a split roll, and ladled the dark, savory drippings into a side cup. You dunked each bite, and the bread soaked up more juice as you went until the roll grew soft and your fingers were a glorious mess. It cost about 40 cents. The dish was born in Los Angeles in the early 1900s, the subject of a famous rivalry between two restaurants that both claim to have invented it and spread to counters across the country. The difference between a great one and a mediocre one is the juice itself, real concentrated roast drippings, not powdered gravy in hot water. As kitchens cut that corner, the hand-carved, real drippings version became the rarity it is today. Number 16, the Sloppy Joe. Long before it came from a can with a cartoon on the label, the Sloppy Joe was a fresh, made-from-scratch counter creation. The cook browned ground beef, drained the fat, then stirred in onion, a little ketchup or tomato, Worcestershire, a touch of brown sugar, and simmered it down until it thickened into a loose, glossy, savory sweet mixture, then spooned it onto a soft bun. It was impossible to eat without making a mess, which is how it got its name. A Sloppy Joe cost $0.25 and fed a hungry kid better than a plain burger for the same money, because the sauce and bun stretched a little beef across a lot of sandwich, which is why counters and school cafeterias loved it. The fresh version, simmered that morning with real onions and a cook's own seasoning, tasted nothing like the gloppy, oversweet canned sauce that took over and erased the memory of the real thing. Number 15, the chili size. This is one almost nobody remembers, which is a shame because it was once a beloved staple, especially out west. A chili size, short for chili size hamburger, was a patty laid open-faced on a bun, smothered under a ladle of chili, and topped with chopped onions and grated cheese. You ate it with a knife and fork, like a proper plated meal. It was the counter's ingenious way of turning a single hamburger into a full, hearty dinner. The strange name came from old menus that listed it as the size of a regular order with chili poured over. It cost about 30 cents and filled you for the afternoon. The chili size was a Depression-era invention, especially popular on the West Coast, and it survived into the diner age of the 1950s. Then it quietly disappeared, and today a customer who ordered a chili size would get nothing but a blank, baffled stare. Number 14. The tuna melt. Drugstores fought over who made the best one, and it became one of the most ordered sandwiches in America before fading. The cook mixed canned tuna with mayonnaise, chopped celery, and a little onion, mounded it on bread, laid American cheese on top, and pressed the sandwich on the buttered griddle until the bread crisped, golden, and the cheese melted down into the warm tuna. The magic was the contrast: hot, gooey cheese and crisp bread against cool, creamy tuna in the center. It cost about 30 cents and came with chips or a pickle. It was the perfect counter food: cheap, shelf-stable, fast, and reliably satisfying. The griddle-pressed version, with its buttery, crackling bread, is a world away from the sad, soggy microwave tuna melts that limp along today, where the bread is steamed instead of grilled and the whole point of the dish is lost. Number 13. The club sandwich. This was the counter's showpiece, a triple-decker tower built to impress. 3 slices of toast, not 2, with layers of turkey or chicken, crisp bacon, lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise cut into 4 triangles and held together with frilled toothpicks topped with little paper ruffles. It arrived, standing tall and architectural, surrounded by potato chips and a pickle, the most elaborate thing the counter served. A club cost about 40 cents, more than most sandwiches because of all that filling with 2 meats, bacon, and 3 slices of bread. Those frilled toothpicks were a small flourish that signaled this was a special order, a cut above the everyday. Real clubs are still made today, but the counter version, freshly toasted, stacked high, pinned with those paper-topped picks, and slid across cool marble, was an accessible daily luxury, a way to feel a bit fancy for 40 cents. And that experience has mostly slipped into the past. Number 12. Deviled eggs. A staple of the cold case at nearly every counter, cheap, portable, and beloved by everyone from children to old men. The cook hard-boiled eggs, halved them, mashed the yolks with mayonnaise, mustard, salt, and paprika, then spooned the mixture back into the whites. They sat in the refrigerated case in tidy, gleaming rows, dusted with red paprika, sold 2 for a nickel as a snack, a light bite, or a side. They were perfect alongside a cold cherry phosphate or a cup of soup. Every counter had its own version, some sweet with pickle relish, some sharp with extra mustard, some with a dash of hot sauce. Deviled eggs survive to this day, but almost exclusively at potlucks and holiday gatherings. As a daily, made fresh, sitting, cold-in-the-case offering you could grab on a Tuesday afternoon, they have all but disappeared from American life. Number 11. The tomato aspic. Here is a dish that defined an era and then, almost overnight, became close to a punchline. Tomato aspic was a savory jelly. Tomato juice set firm with gelatin and seasoned with Worcestershire, lemon, and a little hot sauce, sometimes with celery, olives, or shrimp suspended inside it like flies in amber. It was unmolded from a fancy ring mold onto a leaf of lettuce and served jiggling and gleaming with a dollop of mayonnaise. It wobbled, it glistened, and it was considered the height of refinement at the ladies' lunch counter. A cooling, elegant dish a kitchen could be proud of. A serving cost about 25 cents. Aspic and the whole family of congealed salads it belonged to were everywhere in the 1950s, a sign a counter aimed for a touch of class. Today, the idea of a tomato-flavored jelly strikes most Americans as bizarre, and the dish has vanished so thoroughly that many refuse to believe it was ever popular. Third pattern break. There is one thing about the drugstore lunch counter that goes far beyond the food, and it deserves to be said plainly. For decades, especially across the South, these counters were segregated. Black customers could shop in the same store and hand their money to the same cashier, but were refused a seat at the same counter where white customers ate their tuna melts and sipped their cherry phosphates. On February 1st, 1960, 4 young black college students sat down at the whites-only counter at Woolworth's in Greensboro, North Carolina, and ordered coffee. They were refused service. They did not leave. They came back the next day, and the next, joined by more students, and the sit-in movement spread to dozens of cities. That ordinary counter, the same kind that served cherry phosphates and hot fudge sundaes, became one of the most important stages of the civil rights movement. The same stools where children spun and salesmen ate their hot beef commercials were where a nation was forced to confront itself over the simple question of who was allowed to sit down and eat. That history is woven into every food on this list, and it should never be forgotten alongside the nostalgia. Number 10. The Waldorf salad. Crisp diced apples, celery, and walnuts bound in mayonnaise on a bed of lettuce, this was the counter's idea of a light, sophisticated lunch. It cost about 20 cents, the order of someone watching their figure or just wanting something cool and crunchy instead of a heavy, hot plate. The combination still works: sweet, snappy apple, watery crunch of celery, rich, earthy walnut, all pulled together by the cool, tangy dressing. The salad first appeared at the Waldorf Astoria in New York in the 1890s, which gave it its name and its air of class, and from there it trickled down to lunch counters and tea rooms everywhere, often as the centerpiece of a salad plate. It technically survives in name, trotted out at the occasional holiday, but the everyday counter version, made fresh each morning and scooped onto a lettuce leaf for a quick, refined midday lunch, has faded almost entirely from American habit. Number 9. The salad plate. The salad plate deserves its own number because it was once quite possibly the single most popular ladies' lunch in America. There was no cooking at all, which was its genius. The cook arranged cold items on one plate: a scoop of chicken salad, a scoop of cottage cheese, a few slices of canned peach or pear, a wedge of tomato, and a couple of crackers. Everything came from the cold case, so the whole plate came together in minutes during the lunch rush. It cost about 35 cents and was considered the proper, appropriately light lunch for a woman who had come downtown to shop and needed to sit, rest her feet, and eat something pleasant before catching the bus home. It was elegant, affordable, fast, and customizable. It has vanished so completely that the very concept, a plate of cold scoops eaten as a real meal, strikes most modern Americans as foreign, when it was once the height of a pleasant afternoon out. Number 8. The tin roof sundae. Among the dozens of named sundaes a good fountain could build, the tin roof was a quiet legend. Vanilla ice cream, a ladle of chocolate or marshmallow sauce, and the signature touch, a handful of Spanish peanuts, the small kind with papery red skins, scattered over the top. The salty, oily crunch of those peanuts against the sweet sauce and cold ice cream made it unforgettable, hitting every note at once. The name came from the way the peanuts looked piled up, bumpy and metallic brown, like a corrugated tin roof. It cost a dime in 1953. And it was just one of a whole secret menu of named sundaes a skilled jerk could build from memory. The turtle, with caramel and pecans, the CMP, chocolate marshmallow peanut, and dozens more. That whole world of the named hand-built sundae has been replaced by a squirt of syrup from a pump bottle onto soft serve, and the artistry is gone. Number 7. The banana split. This was the grand finale, the most extravagant thing a fountain could produce, and building one right was a point of pride for any soda jerk. A banana, sliced lengthwise, was laid along the sides of a special boat-shaped dish, with 3 scoops of ice cream nestled between vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. Each scoop got its own topping, chocolate sauce, strawberry, beach, and crushed pineapple. Then it was crowned with whipped cream, chopped nuts, and 3 cherries. It was enormous. It cost a quarter, expensive for a treat, which is why it was so often shared by 2, a courting couple with 2 long spoons, or ordered to mark an occasion. The banana split was invented at a drugstore in Latrobe, Pennsylvania in 1904, and it reigned for 60 years. It still exists here and there, but the hand-built, 3-sauce, properly composed version is increasingly rare, surviving now mostly as a nostalgic novelty. Number 6. The hot fudge sundae. The simplest of the great sundaes, and to many the best. 2 scoops of vanilla in a fluted tulip glass, then the heart of it, real hot fudge, actual cooked sauce kept warm in a pot all day, thick enough to coat a spoon. Ladled over the cold ice cream, it firmed up a little against the chill, then was finished with whipped cream, chopped nuts, and a cherry. The whole point was the contrast between the hot, slightly bittersweet fudge and the cold, smooth ice cream, the 2 fighting in every spoonful, and it depended entirely on that pot of real fudge kept warm, something a machine cannot replicate. It cost 15 cents and was the small reward a mother gave a child for being patient while she ran her errands. The cold, thin, pump bottle fudge of today is not the same thing at all. The warm, dense, hand-ladled fudge of the real counter is one of the great quiet lost pleasures of American eating. Number 5. The plain phosphate. We began with the cherry phosphate, but the plain phosphate, the original version, deserves its own place near the top because it was the everyday default fountain drink for 50 years and is now completely extinct. The jerk took acid phosphate, the sour, slightly mineral, slightly salty liquid that gave the category its name, mixed it with a little simple syrup, and charged it with cold soda water. The result was tart, bracing, fizzy, and barely sweet, the equivalent of a plain seltzer today, what you ordered when you just wanted something cold and refreshing without much sugar. It was sold as a mild tonic and digestive aid, which is the whole reason these drinks lived at a drugstore counter. A plain phosphate cost 3 cents, the cheapest thing on the menu. It defined the early American soda fountain, and yet the moment the counters closed, acid phosphate vanished so thoroughly that today most Americans have never heard the word used to mean a drink, let alone tasted one. Number 4. The cherry smash. Before bottled soda standardized everything, the cherry smash was the fountain's signature fresh fruit drink. The jerk muddled real cherries, or a thick cherry preserve, right in the bottom of the glass, crushing them to release the juice, then added crushed ice and charged it with soda water until it fizzed up red and bright. Sometimes, for a few cents more, he floated sweet cream over the top to make a cherry cream smash. It was deep red, intensely fruity, and far more alive than anything from a can. A cherry smash cost a nickel. The word smash came from the technique, the muddling of the fruit by hand, and fountains advertised it on hand-painted signs in the window to draw in passers-by on a hot day. It was so popular, it was eventually bottled commercially, but the fresh, muddled fountain version, made one glass at a time with real, crushed fruit over crushed ice, disappeared along with the counters that made it famous. Number 3, the chocolate soda. Not a milkshake, not an egg cream, but a chocolate soda, a distinct and once dominant drink most people have forgotten. The jerk laid down chocolate syrup, added a splash of cream, frothed the two with a hard shot of soda water, then dropped in 2 scoops of chocolate ice cream and filled the glass slowly with carbonated water until a dark, foaming head rose over the rim. It was richer than a delicate egg cream, but lighter than a spoon-standing shake, sitting in the perfect middle of the menu. A chocolate soda cost a dime, served with 2 straws and a long spoon. Above all, it was a social drink, the date drink shared across a table, the after-school drink you ordered because you wanted an excuse to sit and linger at the counter. It was for decades one of the most ordered fountain creations in America, and the proper layered hand-built version has now all but vanished. Number 2, the malted milk. The malt was the fountain's true masterpiece, and its quiet decline is one of the most overlooked losses in American food. It started as a regular thick shake, but with one transformative addition, a heaping spoonful of malted milk powder. That powder, made from malted barley, wheat, and evaporated milk, gave the shake a deep, toasty, almost nutty richness, a rounded depth a plain shake could never reach. The jerk ran it on the spindle mixer until thick and smooth, then poured it out and set the steel cup with the leftover overflow right beside it. A chocolate malt cost 20 cents and was the single most iconic order of the soda fountain era. The drink 2 teenagers shared with 2 straws in 1,000 movies and 1,000,000 real first dates. The malted milk powder still exists on a grocery shelf, but the counter that knew how to turn it into a properly thick, toasty, hand-mixed malt is gone, and a whole generation has grown up never tasting the real thing. Number 1, the Coca-Cola, made by hand. At the top sits the drink that started it all, the one almost no one alive remembers being made the right way. For 50 years, a Coca-Cola was not poured from a bottle or shot from a gun. It was built by hand for you. The jerk pumped a measured amount of syrup into the glass, then added cold carbonated water in a slow stream while stirring, judging the fizz, the strength, the temperature, all by feel. Because it was made, you could have it any way you liked. More syrup, less fizz, or transformed entirely with cherry, lemon, chocolate, or a scoop of ice cream. Every glass was a little different because every glass was made by one person for one other person standing 3 feet away. It cost a nickel, a price held steady from 1886 well into the 1950s. This one drink, served glass by glass at marble counters in every town in America, built one of the largest fortunes in history. Then the machine replaced the jerk and made the drink faster, cheaper, and exactly the same every time. And in gaining that consistency, we lost the one thing that made it special, a glass of Coca-Cola made just for you, the way you liked it by a person who knew your name. Here is the challenge. Find an old soda fountain near you. There are still a few hidden in old pharmacies and small towns. Order something off this list: a cherry phosphate, a real malt with the steel cup on the side, a hand-built chocolate soda. Then sit on the stool and drink it slow, the way it was meant to be drunk. And if you cannot find a counter, make a black cow at home tonight. Cold root beer, a scoop of vanilla, and a long spoon. Drop in the comments which one you are going to try. I want to know if the malted milk gets more love than the egg cream, and whether anyone out there still remembers the day they sat at a counter and a man in a paper hat called them by name. Because these were never just drinks and sandwiches. They were the place a whole country once came to sit down together, and we tore it out for shelf space.